Hi, everyone. I hope you're surviving your new lifestyle. But as we gather together in our hearts and around our screens, welcome to our Sunday service for this Easter morning. Just before his death, Jesus said to his disciples that the integrity of a person's faith could be proved by this simple religious quiz. It's right there in Matthew 25. Did you feed the hungry? Did you offer refreshment to the thirsty? Did you clothe the naked? Did you visit the sick and those in prison? That's it. That's the quiz.
And now, good morning. Thank you for all of your concerns over the past week about my injured hand. I'm happy to say that my hand is feeling much better. I have a much smaller bandage on it. And I am going to be playing with two hands today as opposed to one hand last week, so I'm very thankful for that. And we're going to sing hymn number 61, and the words are on the board. We'll sing all three verses, and here we go. Lo, the earth awakes again, Alleluia, from the winter's bond and pain, Alleluia. Bring we leaf and flower and spray, Alleluia, to adorn this happy day, Alleluia. Once again the word come true, Alleluia. All the earth shall be made new, Alleluia. Now the dark cold days are o'er, Alleluia. Spring and gladness and are before, Alleluia. Change then mourning into praise, Alleluia. And for dirges anthem raise, Alleluia. Now our spirits soar and sing, Alleluia. How our hearts leap with the spring, Alleluia.
The living tradition we Unitarian Universalists share draws from many sources. Today we lift up the fourth one, Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Flow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Now is the time for our joys and sorrows, and I will step down to put a stone in the bowl, and I'll come back up to the pulpit. I'd like to begin with great news from Abigail and Chris Dressler. It's a boy, Rowan Ownby Drescher, born Monday, April 6th at 6:42 p.m., 8 pounds, 13 ounces, 20 and a half inches long. And the message from Dad, Mom and baby are healthy. Thank you for everyone's support. What a time to have a child, and we're all so happy for you, and that the baby is safe, the mother is safe, the father is proud. All is good. I'd also like to list up, as you've probably noticed, I'd like to put a stone for all the people that still work at what they call essential businesses now. And it's risky for them, but it's good for us. But I think we should remember them in our hearts of what they're doing for us. And the last stone is that we can't be here together, and we're meeting in our rooms, looking at screens and stuff, but we still are a church, and we still have each other. And in this time of a new lifestyle, reach out to your family and friends, reach out to your church family, reach out to everyone. So the last stone is for the whole world, all of us. We could use a little mercy now. Whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do the good work of this congregation. The offering will now be received online, and the link will be on your screen. Thank you. It's gorgeous. This from A. Powell Davies, a Unitarian minister of the last century, well known. The years of all of us are short, our lives precarious. Our days and nights go hurrying on, and there is scarcely time to do the little that we might do. Yet we find time for bitterness, for petty treason, and evasion. What can we do to stretch our hearts enough to lose their littleness? Here we are, all of us, all upon this planet, and think of these words with what we're going through now. Here we are, all of us, all upon this planet, bound together in a common destiny, living our lives between the briefness of the daylight and the dark. Kindred in this, each lighted by the same precarious flickering flame of life. How does it happen that we are not kindred in all things else? How strange and foolish are these walls of separation that divide us. How can anyone see the only way the world can be saved and not be forced to weep? These words are spoken by Jesus near the end of Nikos Kazantzakis' novel, The Last Temptation of Christ. In this scene, Jesus is being crucified. Suddenly, he finds himself off the cross and, in a fantasy, married and settled in a small town. There, after some years, he is visited by the Apostle Paul, who has been preaching that he, Jesus, is crucified and resurrected. In the argument between them that follows, Paul makes clear that he is going to save the world. Injustice and poverty will be confronted with the message of the crucified and resurrected Jesus. This message has the power and presence to give wings to people's weighty problems, to, and I quote from the novel, Paul, produce great works and great souls, and to lift one a human's height above the earth. Paul says he creates his truth out of human stubbornness and longing and faith. He says, I do not struggle to find it, I build it. I build it taller than people, and thus I make people grow. If the world is to be saved, it is necessary. Now, this stance of forsaking all, even life, for the salvation of others, is probably Kazantzakis' understanding of the Christian message. It appears often throughout the novel. Early in the story, Jesus sighs, if there was only one person who had the strength to starve to death so that people would not die of hunger. In another episode, Jesus identifies with a sacrificial goat and says, "My brother, you are innocent and pure like every animal, but people, the cowards, made you bear their sins and killed you. Poor, poor, weak creatures have not the courage to pay for their sins themselves." Jesus found this unsettling. It was unsettling to see how the world can be saved because the consequences for him were considerable. He must forsake his fantasy of a settled life. He must give up his family. He must give up wanting of life itself. And most of all, he must get back to this business of dying on the cross so that his disciples might have their crucified, resurrected figure who is pivotal for their gospel. As Paul actually is recorded to have said in his letter to the Corinthians, if Christ had not been resurrected, then our preaching is in vain. When Jesus says it's not true that I'm crucified and resurrected, Paul says in the novel, "Shut your shameless mouth. True or false, what do I care? In the injustices and poverty of this world, the crucified and resurrected Jesus has been the one precious constellation for the honest person, the wronged person. It's enough if the world is saved." Could it be that the message of salvation is quite other than Paul states? When Jesus senses or knows this, he is led to weeping. He weeps because of the very otherness of what he sees. Well, what might Jesus see? He might see that, as often he suggested, love is possible. Love is not necessarily simple in itself or in its consequences. It's not even an easy word to use. But love can be. There is a love grounded in strength and self-respect. People yearn for it. Jesus knows this. He sees that it's possible, is at hand, within the grasp, and then is let go. Love is available. Hands could touch and clasp one another in mutual want, and Jesus sees instead the hands release and often the fists close. Why does this happen? Paul's preaching mentions love. His praise of love in the first letter to the Corinthians is famous and known the world over. But Paul's love is founded on assumptions of human weakness. People are seen as a factory of continual misdeed and erroneous loving. They produce volumes of personal guilt for themselves. Ultimately, Paul finds no depth of loving strength within. Salvation is from without. That is his final word. Jesus also sees people not fulfilling what is possible for them, but he does not judge them, reject them, or make them guilty. He does not render people weaker than they are. He affirms the strength within them so they might affirm the love that is. An illustration of this comes from John 8. Early in the morning, Jesus came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. And placing her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such. What do you say about her?" Now this they said to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Well, Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let anyone who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more, he bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away, one by one, beginning with the eldest. and Jesus was left alone with a woman standing before him. Jesus looked up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and do not sin again." The love that Jesus preaches does not call on us to reject the loving strength inside ourselves. Rather, it calls on us to be strong enough to encourage and assist a similar strength in other people. The way of this gospel is radical love, a love which loves regardless of how lovable the other person, values regardless of how valuable the other person, trusts regardless of how trustworthy the other person, and by doing so, creates love, value, and trust between people. It is where trust and respect are strength aspects of loving. It is a place where people, even through periods of difficult behavior, value and trust each other. Imagine if we truly practice this radical love as a congregation. Even through periods of difficult behavior, we truly value and trust each other. What would be different? What would we learn about ourselves? Love is not simple in itself or in its consequences, but love can be. The way of this gospel is not law. Love does not find its application in rules or its grounding in categories of people. The gospel does not suggest that society is to be without law. But there is a power of love that the gospel addresses to law. This love has transforming and healing power for both individuals and society. Such love is obviously disruptive. Hope is real, change can come about, people can be free. Weakness of nature is not the final word. The final word lies instead in the strength of our loving. In the strength of our loving is where our possibilities are born. For love is disruptive and can lead to change. If this were not true, then love would not be the enormous power we want it to be and know it to be. The gospel of Jesus does center on love. This love says yes to the possibilities of life. The expression of such love must be in community. It does request a reality, what we are, and not just what we say. There is a remaining concern that I have. It is not about institutional failure, nor is it a worry over individual lack. We are human. The empowering love we are addressing is clearly love in spite of the conditions of existence. Such love is not perfectionist in its desire or its goal. Yet, could Paul be correct? Ultimately, at some place within ourselves, is the human soul more comfortable saying no to itself? Are we too uncomfortable to go very far with saying yes to the possibilities of life? The danger in our inability to say yes to ourselves is the resulting need to say no to others and to make others say no to themselves. It all rolls into a complicated tale of violence. This from Doug Adams' novel, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Now, this reading is dated, and you will hear. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 98 million miles and is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that they still think digital watches are a pretty neat idea. This planet has, or rather had, a problem, which was this. Most of the people living on it were unhappy for pretty much of the time. Many solutions suggested for this problem, but most of these were largely concerned with the movements of small green pieces of paper, which is odd because on the whole, it wasn't the small green pieces of paper that were unhappy. And so the problem remained. Lots of people were mean, and most of them were miserable, even the ones with digital watches. Many were increasingly of the opinion that they all made a big mistake in coming down from the trees in the first place. And some said that even the trees had been a bad move and no one should have even left the oceans. And then one Thursday, nearly 2,000 years ago, one man was nailed to a tree for saying how great it would be to be nice to people for a change. Is this the gospel of radical love? That no one needs to be nailed to anything ever again? That we finally get it? That we're all brothers and sisters on this planet? And with the coronavirus, if we don't get that with this, we're going to never get it. But the question is, can anybody really help another? Does understanding Jesus' weeping matter for us? Isn't it appropriate that we seek to understand how to improve the odds for enabling strength, hope, and love in our lives? I leave you with these words from my colleague, Alan Jones. In the end, ministry is deceptively simple. We tend not to trust the simplicity at the heart of religion, that we were made by love and for love. Happy Easter, everyone.
Hello again. For our closing song, we're going to do number 311, Let It Be a Dance. And I know we've been in our homes a lot, so if you feel like getting up and dancing with whoever's in your house with you, or even dancing by yourself, you certainly have my permission. And those of you who often play instruments on this hymn, you can play them in your home and sing along with us. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let the dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words. Fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May we have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow in the wind, let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. And take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance.
Our closing words are from Martin Luther King Jr. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody they're traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. That's it.
We're going to have a postlude.
We are?
Postlude. My hand is better. We'll have a postlude today. I think for Easter Sunday, we're going to do a song by Irving Berlin. Feel free to sing along at home if you know the words. Thanks a lot, folks, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.